I hope you all had a great weekend. Today we're just going to talk really quickly about some stuff in the middle section of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Um, our version of the poem, for whatever reason, cuts out parts 2 and 3 of the poem, but you really need to understand what's going on in those to get what's going on in the poem. So today we're going to talk about the poetic structure of the poem really quickly, and then what happens in those middle sections. So by the time that this poem was written, medieval English scholars were already looking back on Anglo-Saxon poetry like Beowulf and trying to emulate that. They were already studying that, which is crazy to me that they're studying the same stuff that we study today. And then we study them too. But the two things that they really tried to emulate when they imitated Anglo-Saxon poetry were alliteration and the caesuras. So remember, alliteration is just the repetition of the same letters or same sounds at the beginning of words. So we can see that here. Even in translation, some translators are able to preserve that in the poem. So that's what we're going to look at right now. So we see that in Christmas, Camelot, and King in this line, and then lords and loyal liegemen arranged as brothers round the round table. Their reckless jokes rang about that rich hall. So we see alliteration in all of these lines, but we see the caesura as well. And the pause isn't as pronounced in modern English as it probably would be in Middle English, but you can still hear it. So one Christmas in Camelot, King Arthur sat at ease with his lords and loyal liegemen, arranged as brothers round the round table. Their reckless jokes rang about that rich hall. So you see that in here as well. But the medieval poets also used a poetic technique that was more unique to them. This is something called the bob and wheel. And this specific poetic structure was used as well in medieval hymns and things. So you might have heard medieval hymns in church at some point in your life and heard this and not realized that's what you were listening to. So the bob and wheel is basically a 5-line poetic structure that comes at the end of sections of the poem to indicate it's the end of the stanza. And this part is the bob. It's a very, very short line. And then the wheel is 4 lines. And these 5 lines have a specific rhyme scheme and a more prominent rhythm when you read them aloud. And the specific rhyme scheme we see here is A, B, A, B, A. So you can see filled, will, and hill all have that A rhyme scheme. And then the B rhyme scheme is blessing and surpassing, which is really more of a half rhyme, but again, this is translated. So that's the translator has done the best they can to preserve that. So that is the poetic structure of the poem. So the midsection of the poem is the next thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about. I'm really just going to summarize it, but there's a couple of things I want to focus in on. So one part of the poem that they really focus on, it talks about what Sir Gawain is wearing as he heads off to fight the Green Knight. And it goes into detail about his shield, and it tells us the outside of the shield, it's just a normal metal shield, but the inside of the shield, it's bright red. So let me see if I can draw that. It's bright red, and let's see. This is not the easiest. This is not the easiest thing in the world to draw with. So it's a bright red shield, but within that shield there is a pentangle, and it tells us it's a 5-sided and 5-pointed shape. And this shape represents a lot of things for Gawain. It represents his 5 senses being strong. It represents his 5 fingers being strong. It represents a couple of Catholic concepts like the 5 joys of Mary or the 5 wounds of Christ. But it also represents 5 knightly virtues for Gawain. And those are generosity, then moderation or temperance. It represents him being friendly and being hospitable. it represents him following a code of chivalry. So he's courteous and polite to ladies and fair in games. And the most important one at the top of the pentangle is piety. So he is religious. And we will come back and talk about those knightly virtues and whether he ends up fulfilling those or not. But for right now, the pentangle, which this is like a really important mystical symbol for the medieval people, but it's a symbol that can be traced all the way back to the ancient Greeks and people like Pythagoras. And I know pentangle is like a fancy, weird sounding name, but here's the thing. I can pretty much guarantee that every single one of you has drawn a pentangle in your life because this is a pentangle. It's, it's autocorrected it into a star, but it's literally this. It's like the star that you learned how to draw in elementary school with those lines and everything. And I called it an endless knot and said that like it's a knot and the lines never end. You can't see a beginning or end, but that's just always struck me. It's funny that it's like this really important symbol to them. It's something everybody nowadays, like you just learn how to draw it in school. And yes, it is really similar to the pentagram, which you might have seen this like turned upside down in shows like Supernatural or Lucifer to summon demons. But in the Middle Ages, it was purely a Catholic symbol of goodness. So Gawain has that. He sets out to look for the Green Chapel in the woods once it's getting close to having been a year and a day since he met the Green Knight. And along the way, he finds this mansion in the woods, and he goes into the mansion in the woods after asking to be invited in, of course, and he meets a guy named Lord Bersalec. And Lord Bersalec says, well, lucky for you, the Green Chapel is only 2 miles away from here. So you have 3 days until New Year's Day. So why don't you stay here, just relax with us, and then on the morning of New Year's Day, you can just ride out and be there in no time at all. And so Gawain comes in, he sits down and eats at a big dinner with Lord Bersalec, and there he sees Lady Bersalec. So this is Lord Bersalec's wife. She's absolutely beautiful, and she walks in with a really, really hideous, ugly old woman. But Gawain only pays attention to the pretty lady. And while they are sitting there eating dinner, Lord Bersalec also asks Gawain if he would like to play a game. And Gawain says, sure, of course, because that was kind of part of the code of chivalry, was playing these games to prove that you were clever and that you would follow through if you lost the game or whatever, all of that. And so the game this time is, every day Lord Bersalec goes out hunting. And meanwhile, Gawain will just chill in the castle. And Lord Bersalec says, whatever I get in the woods that day, I'll bring back, and I'll trade you for whatever you got that day. And to Gawain, this is a pretty sweet deal because he's just going to be like sitting in the castle, so he won't get anything. So he'll just be like, here you go, I got nothing, and then he'll get like free hunted food for free. So he says, sure, I'll play the game. And he probably regrets that pretty quickly because the next morning, once Lord Bersalec is gone, Sir Gawain is laying in bed until the sun rises. He is just chilling there, and then he hears somebody come in his room. And he pretends to be asleep, and it turns out to be Lady Bersalec. And she sits on the edge of his bed, and he's pretending to be asleep. But eventually, when she doesn't leave, he pretends to wake up because he figures at this point like it would be rude not to ask what she wants. And so he asks what she wants, and she offers to spend the day with him, cheating on her husband. And Sir Gawain politely declines, although it is a pretty tempting offer. He says no, and she insists on kissing him on the cheek. And she leaves, and then that evening, Lord Bersalec brings Gawain the deer that he has hunted, and in exchange, Gawain kisses Lord Bersalec on the cheek and does not explain where he got the kiss from, and Lord Bersalec does not ask. And on the second day, the exact same thing happens. Lady Bersalec comes in. She tries to seduce Gawain again. Gawain says no, but gets the kiss on the cheek, and that evening he trades it for the animal that Lord Bersalec has hunted. So that's where I'm leaving off this video because our copy of the poem picks up on the third day. So we will talk about that tomorrow. But for right now, thank you for your attention and have a great day.